discussing the topic of, let me pull it up again, the truth about marriage. And we'll start off with the first question, I guess, from the assignment that we had to do individually. So what messages, obvious or subtle, are being communicated by the articles? Hint, there's more than one. What do you think?
Well, I think there were some that were completely obvious, not subtle at all, like the picture one of the different families, you know, and pictures of gays and lesbians. That's not subtle at all. That's
right. Mm-hmm. And I felt the same way too when I was watching the video on the street interviews, and how some people were like really strong about their beliefs about it, like gay marriage not being right, and then others being like, well, they're just human beings, why not? So I think it depends a lot on who the person is and how they were brought up, because I noticed how that girl was like, that's just how I was raised, like I'm a Christian, and other people were like, yeah, whatever, I don't really mind. But what other things do we think about when we do this question? Like, what other things are either subtle or not so subtle, like Jody said?
Well, I think that one of the more blatant things that, you know, people to try to convince everybody that we should allow gay marriage or whatever is the guilt or the shaming. Like, you're a bigot, you're this, you're that, you hate this group of people. And so it kind of shames you into wanting to agree with them. Mm-hmm. And that's unfortunate because, you know, we have a right to believe what we believe. Obviously, we shouldn't do it in out of hatred or whatever. But I think that guilting people like, well, they're humans, they should have rights too, and right. You know, that whole guilt thing can really get to you and make you think, well, yeah, I guess that's true. You know, why shouldn't they? And those are one of the more blatant arguments, I think, or blatant messages that they're sending is like, well, if you don't think they should have those rights, then you're a bad person.
Yeah, and I feel like it's sometimes even harder now because of social media and like everything being so public and everything spreads really fast, that no matter what your opinion is, people are always going to have their own opinion and they're always going to think that they're the right ones. They're never going to want to think, okay, well, you think that way because of X factor. It's because like you're a bigot, you're this, you're that. Like you're not thinking the way that the world is thinking now, so you're like against it, kind of in a bad way, because like we are against it, but like it said in other things that we read, we are pro the principles, not against the people.
Yeah.
This was interesting to me because I used to be one of those people because I'm a convert and my best friend converted before I did. And it was a heated topic for us talking about, you know, marriage and gay people not being able to have, have that before it was passed a few years ago. And I didn't have kids at the time either. So a lot of things changed for me once, you know, I got older, I had kids, and I really started to understand. And once I joined the church too, like the whole dynamic and the setup, you know, for family and what it is and why it is that way. And while I just feel like society and the government is focusing on the wrong thing. Like I feel that we all have our agency and we should be able to choose. And if you want to be in a relationship with someone like that, that's your choice, but it's not marriage. That's not what marriage is. And like in the video, when that guy was talking about how he was in the military and how it kind of hindered him because if he was to get stationed overseas, he couldn't take his partner with him and stuff like that. I think there should be, you know, they want equality like that. I think there should be, you know, health benefits or certain things like that you can give to someone. It could be anyone, you know, it needs to be reformed to where there's equality for those types. That's what I hear mostly people cry about when they want equality. I mean, it doesn't, you know, if you love someone, that a marriage, like whatever, that has nothing to do, like what they were saying with focus on, like, are people looking at the feelings of it or like the actual structure of it? Like, your feelings are your feelings. And I think that a lot of times people want, when they say equality, they want the benefits that society has established, you know, health, healthcare, etc. And so I think we're looking at it all wrong. But it was even interesting to me because one time I talked to someone else who is openly gay, and they said to me, they were like, you know, keep on making like more of us, as I'm referring to like having kids. Like, they understood. It was just interesting to me that they had this belief for themselves, but they understood that like without, you know, heterosexual couples, they wouldn't exist. And it was just baffling to me. Like, they understood, you know, the structure of it, but they still didn't. So it's been interesting to really kind of break it down.
Right. And now that you mentioned that, because I had never heard any gay person say that before, like they appreciate the heterosexuals for creating people that they can possibly raise themselves as well. My first thought on the video that she posted, when I think it was a lesbian girl, she was saying, well, we're not robbing you, we're not doing anything to them, we're not doing something. But when she said the robbing part, the first thing that popped in my mind was like, well, you're kind of robbing the opportunity for more souls to come. Like, you're making it so it takes a lot longer for the souls that need to come. But then I thought of it in the way that like it can be a good thing that they want to raise families and do the things that they want to do. So I understand the whole like the health care and the rights that they want for equality, which I am okay with as well, because if it's going to happen, then might as well make it a good thing instead of a bad thing. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of thinking as I go. But it is really interesting what you just said. So.
Well, and then Anderson talked about that in the book where he was like, we need to address the overall, you know, majority, not like single case, you know, like when he was talking about like when people get married, of course, women past a certain age or some couples can't have children. And has that, you know, that's been, you know, has that been the case like in the whole, you know, millennia before? I mean, that happens sometimes, but the whole principle of marriage is that, you know, you'll have kids and have a family. And then he was saying that every single kid that comes into, you know, that's born is born to a mother and father. So while sometimes you might not get those things, like it's still the, you know, the principle. I'm trying to look at it as I'm reading this or as I'm saying this, so that's what I'm kind of.
Yeah, I think people get sidetracked easily by like that. When they're older, things like that. Sorry, I'm trying to put it all together. But like in the reading where it talked about there's a third of people who are for it, a third who aren't, and a third who are skeptics. I feel like that's why it's important that we're able to articulate it and not get like, sometimes I think like kind of, for example, like with abortion, they say, well, what about in rape or incest? You know, I think the same thing happens with gay marriage, that they take a small situation and try and say it across the board, you know, that's because of the situation, that's why these take place. And rather than looking at the benefits of preserving it, they look at the benefits for like the minority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard so many times it says the majority of Americans, like in the 7 Stunning Images article, it says when the Supreme Court passed that, and they put that with the majority of Americans supporting it, but really when they do the statistics, the majority is not supporting it. It's a small, you know, group. It's the minority that still is. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book Stand for Family. It's got some great information in it, but yeah, when they go over to the United Nations and they protest these things, it's very small groups, and they end up passing these laws because these extremists are there advocating for it, and they get passed because there aren't enough people there defending it. And they say that the majority of people agree this way. It's kind of them flying under the radar to get these laws passed with the votes there, because there aren't people there to defend. There isn't the majority there to defend the laws that they would like to see established or upheld.
Yeah.
So When it comes to same-sex marriage, is a very complicated topic, and um, you know, I believe, as a member of the church, we have to respect the decisions and approach it with love, care, and understanding. It's the only thing we have to do because, unfortunately, it's happened within our church. Every day we see that. So be a part of Bishop Rick. I've been dealing with that, and the only thing I do is counsel with love and understanding. Um, because it might be genetic, it might be environment. We don't know exactly what might cause it. Every individual are unique. So, um, from the articles, there's two articles that really, got my attention. The normal family article, and that talks about what is family. He says that quote statistically is no longer a mother and father and their biological children living together under one roof, and certainly not with dad going off to work and mom stay home. So, in spite of this may be the ideal family structure, this is no longer the reality. We have to accept that. You know, family definition is changing. While the societies become more and more permissive. For example, the cohabitation, um, it's increasing. The same-sex partner to living together. A single parents raising their children. The other article is pretty much similar. Goes to the synchronized with this one is the other was the refining the traditional American family in the seven stunning images. Unfortunately, that's our society reality again. You know, so same-sex partners living together, same-sex partners raising children together. Um, so, like I was saying, we, I don't know, as a I'm a convert to the church. I converted when I was 19 years old. So I've been in both sides. So I know, I can say in both worlds. So I know exactly how it feels. So, like I said, it's approach it out with love, and also we have to because when I say approach with the love, it doesn't mean like yes, let it do it. No, we have to advocacy, against some rules that are being created, they're being designed, because we have to understand that the family is important in the Heavenly Father plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to advocate this one also. So we have to be careful how we deal with this, sensitive topic.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying because you're kind of going into like the next question, which is like, the what does the new normal mean to you? And you kind of already explained it, what it does to you being on both sides, like not being part of the church and then now being a part of the church, which is really cool. I love talking to people who are converts because it's a whole different way of thinking than, for example, me, that I've been raised in the church. I was born into the church. So it's really interesting because I know that I struggle a lot with understanding how to be okay with gay marriage, because personally I have a cousin who is gay and he's LDS. He was born LDS as well. And but what I struggle with is seeing sometimes the Snapchats that he is like actively protesting in Temple Square for like gay rights and stuff. But then he's like, oh, I'm at the temple, I'm here, I'm doing good religious things. But then he's like completely going against it. And so sometimes when I see him, I'm like, I don't even want to talk about anything regarding this situation because it is a tricky situation and I don't know how to express my feelings of not being okay without making him feel bad. So does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a hard topic to get into a debate
Mm-hmm.
with at this point because I feel like there's so many strong emotions attached to this topic. And I keep thinking about that as I was reading, like during this whole week and even last week when we were starting to dive into some of our material. I just could not help but think how difficult, think of it, of how hard is it to talk to somebody who's already mad at you, like to try to reason with them. And that you're already like, but I already, like, I know my stance. I believe in it so much. and how hard it would be to kind of debate that. And I think, I mean, you can think differently or whatever, but I don't think it's the time for debate, to debate with people. But I do think it is time to stand up for the family, because I don't think debate is doing us any good, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like it's just two heated parties fighting.
Yeah, and that's why I don't even want to talk to those things about him.
Yeah, and it's hard to even, I mean, think of when you're angry. Do you want anybody to tell you anything? Like, no. You're just mad and you want to be mad, and I 100% understand that. So I think standing up for family is, one, raising children that understand what the family unit is and how important that is to them, and their gender roles and all these things, and understanding those principles. And I think it is being that example. I don't know that protesting in the streets is going to do us much good. Like, let's fight for families that way, but there's other ways that we can do that. There's other ways that we can still advocate for those things. And I may not know exactly what, but I just think that, yeah, like Ecoletta was saying, it's important to love them and to avoid that hatred in your heart or that anger in your heart when talking about the topic. And even what Lacey was saying, like, she was saying, like, yeah, some rights should be granted to them as far as healthcare and things like that. Like, that I agree with. But as far as marriage, a marriage just isn't about the couple anymore. It becomes about society. They introduce children into that family. And once children are introduced into a same-sex couple, same-sex marriage or whatever, once they start having, like, adopting children or whatever, it makes it impossible for that child to have an eternal family. And that's God's plan in the end. And so that's what's kind of, and that's hard to explain to people that aren't members of church or whatever, but yeah, it's just, it is interesting because it is so heated, and it's hard to have a conversation about it without getting angry and without feeling attacked or being the attacker or whatever. And so I think it's important that we stand strong for what we believe, but we avoid that anger part of it, or attacking or feeling, or attacking or feeling attacked during the whole conversation.
I think we need to know, like, how to be empowered and what type of things to say, because there have been studies about, people who have been raised with two mothers or two fathers and how they have yearned for that other figure in their life, and so sometimes if we just brush over that and don't bring that up, I think by bringing it up, that is showing our love and compassion and saying, hey, look at this. What about this, though? Is it really fair for kids to not have the relationship with their father? And yes, that happens all the time, in other situations. But we're working for the ideal. And I totally do remember that one part where the lady said about the article that this absolutely makes me sick.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly the wrong way to go about it, and not showing compassion. And I just think of Heavenly Father, how he always seeks after the one. And that's kind of, I know it's good to have group efforts, but I think as we individually, seek out for your cousin, I think a lot of us have been people in our life who are homosexual. And I think as we seek out the one, that can offer more opportunities for change if we're coming at it with compassion.
Mm-hmm. That was kind of perfect of what you and Jody and I had talked about on our discussion board, that I think the only way we're going to really get through to people is like what Finley was saying, not debating anymore. It's being the example. And that kind of leads into question 4 with what measures should we as disciples of Christ be promoting. And Jody and I talked about the sincerity, being sincere when we talk. And I had made a post back to her saying that when you're in the heat of the moment with an argument, people are not going to hear you, especially when they're set in their ways. But hopefully once the dust settles and they can reflect back on the debate or talk or whatever they had gone through with you, hopefully they'll see how sincere you were and how grounded you were in your stance. And hopefully that will start to open them up to question well, why are they this way? Why are they so, sincere about this? Why do they believe so strongly about this? And hopefully start to chip away at that or do their own research, maybe privately, or maybe it will soften them. And the next time somebody wants to have a discussion about that with them, maybe later on down the road, they'll be more open or receptive at that time. So maybe it's not our particular purpose with that person at that time to get through to them, but maybe it's to soften them and help them prepare to be more receptive to it with someone else later.
Yeah. And kind of how you were saying, like just through example and everything, it kind of makes me think of how we, or like ever since the church started, basically, it's always been a silent battle from our end. We're the ones that are not out there protesting. We're not the ones that are yelling at the people, or hopefully, So I think it's super interesting to see how we're still, like, how Jesus Christ was. He wouldn't tell people or like yell at them, or he wouldn't. He would tell them like what was wrong, or like, but in a very loving way. So for us to still be that way, I think it's super cool, and it's a great link in between our time and his time, because right now it's a very outspoken era, especially with the internet, how people are always spitting out their opinion without even thinking. So we do kind of have to fight this battle in a very silent and loving way, like you guys were saying. So yeah, thanks about that. Let's see. Do you have anything to say, Anacleto? Okay, good. So I think let's move on to number 3. It has taken mankind thousands of years to finally step away from the archaic definition of the traditional family and not only accept but embrace new structures of family. Why is that, and why do you think it is happening now?
I think the scripture where it talked about being poisoned by degrees is a great example of why this is. It's slowly eroding. And that's why it took thousands of years.
Yeah. No,
Interesting to see like how in the book Anderson talks about how this has all just happened within like the last 50 years. Like this is new. It's been like millennial, like the structure of it. And we're learning that it takes about 30 years. It takes about a generation for results and effects to be learned. And so we're just now getting to that point where we're able to fully see the consequences of these actions. Like this was all happening before, and people are like, well, it's not bothering you. It's not, it's not affecting you. Well, it hasn't been long enough for the full consequences of these decisions to take place. And then they mention the people, who have posted there's been children who were raised by same-sex couples, and they're trying to put their voice out saying this is not right. I wish I had a mom and a dad. Like they're against it, and they're trying to hush those voices because that's just even more, research on our, side saying that this is not a good idea, and people don't want to hear that. But it's interesting that it has just happened within the last 50 years, and and people don't realize yet that the worst is yet to come, and the consequences that we make today, might not show up today, but they're going to show up later, and then it's going to be really hard to try to reverse it. And that's why I think it's so important that they want us to defend it and keep the things that we have now, because it's going to be harder to take that back later. Well, you can even take it back later. The choices are going to be made, and things are going to be done.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was last semester, maybe it was the semester before that, I was reading about, and this is kind of off the topic of same-sex, but I'll bring it back because it kind of ties in. But I remember reading something about, I think it was Ronald Reagan, who had who found the no-fault divorce law in California. And he was I was reading an article about it, and after my during the class I would go research outside sources about this topic and kind of see the effects of that, because that's when divorce really started to be a big thing, was when that law was passed. And how he was like, that was one of the biggest mistakes of my political career, because it just led to this slow, he was trying to make it so people didn't have to lie when they went to court. Because some people would go and they'd say, well, he cheated on me and that's why I want a divorce, when it wasn't really that way. They were just trying to get out of the marriage. And so he wanted to make it so people didn't have to lie or for a person because of a marriage, because it had happened to him or whatever. And he was saying this is one of the biggest mistakes of his career, because it's just led to this slow downfall of what the family is, and how divorce has affected our society so much. And then how you look at divorce and how it a lot of kids, they come from divorced families, they say, well, it was so hard on, and it was such a trial on me, and then one of the arguments for same-sex marriages is well, we provide a happier home for kids because they're not in these divorced homes, and it's not this crazy, contentious, abusive, yelling environment. Wouldn't it be better if they're with us than in a situation like that? And so that's one of the main arguments, and it's just interesting to see how Satan has chipped away slowly as we've come through time to make that argument possible for them to do. And it all it started years ago when, it wasn't even about same-sex couples anymore. At that point, it was about heterosexual couples. So he was chipping away at that. So then now they have these arguments to fall back on. And I think it's important as we start to advocate for these families and to advocate for families and for children. I think it's important that we do stand our ground, no matter, because we're going to get hate wherever we go because of what we do, because it's not a popular thing to talk about. Yeah. And so I think it's important that we still maintain that without the anger we were talking about. Because Satan has done his job. He's done a good job. He's good at what he does, and we just have to do better.
Finley, are you still good on time? Oh, sorry, Anacleto. Are you still good on time, Finley?
Yeah, I have about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Okay, good. Go ahead, Anacleto.
No, I just want to add and emphasize it, that I believe personally that revolution is a big part of it. And the family, a lot of things used to be a family taboo. People don't talk about it. We used to do it, hide it, in the darkness. So they took advantage of this big wave, so to emerge, to put these things, in front. I think, like I said, the revolution was a big part of it.
Awesome. Well, how many minutes do we have? 3 minutes left?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Does
I don't know if this is a four question. The other question, I don't know if you want to talk about, is about the government rule. I don't know if you want to.
yeah.
We talked about, we made a couple little comments about it, but yeah, how I know I talked about it a little bit when I said that I feel like the government kind of shouldn't be in it. I think that they should have benefits and they should look at different aspects of it, but as far as them defining it and trying to, change it and equalize marriage on that matter, I don't think that they should be in that. Like it said in the book, marriage existed, millennials before government. The government didn't create marriage. Marriage was created first before, almost everything else. And so I don't think that they should be involved in changing it. But, if they want to be involved in making healthcare more available and helping people, have benefits and things that way that are together, I agree that they should have a role in that. But as far as defining what marriage is and what a family, is, I don't think that they should.
Yes, because question was about the government role
Right.
in all this. Why is the government interested in a marital union in the first place? So I don't want to do exceptions right here. Separate like gay marriage and husband and wife. But I do believe that government, role in doing all of this. It's because marriage is both per service, and essential. It's per service and essential. If you see all across, our country, in every region, every social class, every race and ethnicity, every religion or non-religion people get married. We can see this, it's we see it everywhere in the world. For many, it's not most people or whatever. Marriage is not a trivial matter. I think personally it is the key, to pursue happiness. That's why I think the government is trying to promote marriage. It doesn't matter if you're lesbian, gay or straight, And sometimes people aspire to and keep aspiring to, and again, even when their experience has been far from happy. So, but my question is this: like we see it every day, the Supreme Court decisions granting same-sex couples, a constitutional rights to marriage, But my question is, how such a ruling might affect the religious institutions? Okay, I know, Also, do you think they are putting some types of pressure to them, to religion government, to the religious institution? I personally believe, or certainly, believe that they are not making pressure towards LDS Church, but it might happen to other religious institutions that receive some types of financial support from the government. So a lot of people sometimes don't pay attention to this, but it's starting again slowly, but they are making some type of pressure to some religious institutions. So it's something that we have to open our eyes and take into consideration. Because don't be surprised, in 10 years, you see some church allow gay marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be surprised in 10 years.
Yeah.
But I know that would happen in LDS church. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the guy in the video also said, like, well, how is it going to affect society? He's like, I don't think it'll affect society, but I do think it'll affect churches, like church systems. So I think you're totally right on that one. It's really interesting to see how it'll develop, for sure, because I'm interested to see what's going to happen. But like you said, I know that our church, the LDS church, is going to be just fine. Okay. So are we good on time, Finley?
Yeah. So does somebody want to do the 2-minute summary? Who said they were going to do that?
Who wants to be the data manager?
I guess I can go ahead and do it. We'll just kind of wing it.
Okay.
So I didn't write anything down, but so okay. So summary. So we started off saying that the majority. There's been studies that have been done, and some people think that the majority of Americans agree with the same-sex marriage laws that were passed. When further research has kind of shown that it's not the majority that's agreed with it. We spoke about how we think the government shouldn't be involved in as far as changing what marriage is defined as, but we agree that the government should look at different aspects of providing equality, with things such as healthcare and housing and stuff like that, that other couples, are denied. Let's see what else. We talked about being an example, being Christ-like, being sincere, taking a stance, and sometimes that debating is not going to get through. It's our actions will speak louder than words, and that we have yet to truly see the consequences of these actions, and as we're just beginning, with the no fault divorce passing, and the same-sex marriage passing a few years ago, it takes about 30 years for the generation to see the consequences of decisions that were made. So we've yet to see if this is going to affect us or not. So when people say that it's not going to, it's not really a valid answer at this point. And the last point was that we do have to keep our eye out, because there will be more pressure for on churches and religions to be accepting of this, and we may see that in the very near future. Is there anything else that anybody wants to throw in there real quick?
That's great.
Not at all.
All right, and stop the broadcast.
Okay.